Okay, how's it going, everyone? So today we're going to be talking mostly about intelligence theorists, basically just their impact on psychology and the field of intelligence studies. So let's start with just the basic idea of what is intelligence. So intelligence simply is the ability to solve problems, learn from experiences, and use knowledge to adapt to new situations. That's it. There you go. That's intelligence. Some people have a lot of it, some people don't have much of it, and so that's what we're going to be looking at. And what we'll be focusing on when we're talking about these theorists is their exploration of how to measure intelligence, what intelligence means, and things like that. So here is a short list of the intelligence theorists that we're going to be talking about, and just talking about once again, their impact on society and where we are today and our understanding of what intelligence is. So intelligence testing can be really brought back to this man, Alfred Benjamin. And Alfred Benjamin is going to be the first person to create an intelligence quotient, basically a standardized intelligence test. France was going through some issues back in the very early 1900s, and basically what ended up happening is they were transitioning from an agricultural society to wanting to be a little bit more industrial. They were noticing that other major countries around the world were kind of surpassing them. They just had a bunch of people who worked and lived on farms, and education was a big issue, as most farms needed their sons and daughters to work on the farm, and so they wouldn't get a lot of school. So France decreed that everyone had all students below the age of 18 need to come and start doing public school, and so in order to help facilitate this transition, Alfred Benjamin was hired to help figure out where students were struggling and to help kind of balance that out, because what you're getting, 15, 16-year-olds who have had, a first graders at a first grading reading level, and not because they're stupid, but because they just haven't had the education. Maybe they went to 1 to 2 years of school and then left. And so Benjamin created a test, an IQ scale that helped teachers recognize problem areas of students. And these questions were meant to help teachers recognize faults and help kind of put the students in the right place and help them, figure out what they really needed. And Benjamin, as he was doing his work, one of the things that he really warned about was, this ability to measure intelligence can go to some really dark places, and we'll kind of take a look at some of those issues that came back. But simply put, you need to know Alfred Benjamin started as the first person to put together that intelligence quotient, and really just kind of got this whole ball rolling. So Sir Francis Galton was around before Alfred Benjamin, but Sir Francis Galton is best known for his work on heredity, and specifically his work with a movement known as the eugenics movement. So this big old thing right here, the eugenics movement. Basically, for Sir Francis Galton, the idea that intelligence is passed on through genes became this, was kind of, piggybacking on Charles Darwin's old theories of evolution, and that what needs to happen is that specific people need to breed with other specific people in order to have better offspring. So the eugenics movement became this rallying cry for certain groups of people, specifically Anglo-Saxons, to basically spout off like, hey, we're a superior race. We don't need our blood mixing with other people's blood. It just, makes it worse. You know, Sir Francis Galton's work is touted by Adolf Hitler and the Aryan race, and so this idea of keeping the bloodline pure and things of that nature, specifically for intelligence, was enhanced with this eugenics movement. So that's Sir Francis Galton. Make sure the eugenics movement is the big thing that you need to note from him. So kind of stepping away from eugenics, we're going to talk about Charles Spearman. So as the years kind of moved along, Spearman was studying intelligence, and what he kept finding, he did all these tests, and he kept finding something very strange. And this really strange thing was known as the G factor. So the G factor is this idea that all intelligence can be measured down to this one simple concept, this one thing. It showed that a person with a high G factor was generally just better at all other things. So we all know that student in the class that they complain about, oh, man, I'm really not super great at English. And then they get like a 94 or 95 on the test and like, oh, well, that's not my best score. And they just seem to be good at everything. Well, Charles Spearman spouts and believes that this concept of like, well, people who are just, better at a lot of things, have just more intelligence, that can all be, intelligence is all just boiled down to this G factor. So he had people take all these different tests, testing on their mechanical skills, their verbal, their spatial, their numerical, all sorts of stuff. And what he found is that even though he had all of these different areas that he studied, people that had what he called the high G were just better at everything. And even if it was quote unquote their worst, it was oftentimes better than someone with a low G score. So that's the G factor. Basically, it's all intelligence can be boiled down to one specific factor, and that is the G factor. Factor analysis is an aspect of testing that Charles Spearman came up with. It's basically a procedure that identifies groups of related items, which they called factors. And it's simply this. Mr. Monk is creating a test. When he is creating the test over Unit 1 and Unit 2, he is going to have certain questions that talk about the history of psychology. He's going to have certain questions that talk about research. He's going to have certain questions that talk about ethics. He's going to have certain questions that talk about the brain and the spinal cord and neurons, okay? And so what ends up happening is at the end of the test, Mr. Monk takes all that data, and he finds that overall, his students got an 85 average on the test. Great. Okay. However, everyone on that test got like 1 out of 5 questions. There were 5 questions about neurons, and on average, students only got 1 out of 5 of those correct. So what that shows me is that, well, while the test was an overall success, this one specific area was a big failure. And so now that I understand what area is the problem, I can go back and I can fix that. That's all factor analysis is that when you are giving a test, you have like sections within the test that help you understand, okay, well, this person, we can have a test that measures all of these things. We just need to make sure that we know which questions are talking about mechanical, which are spatial, which are numerical, and which are verbal. That's literally all factor analysis is. It is in no way big or expansive. That's simply what it's talking about. So L.L. Thurstone isn't really a guy that you're technically supposed to know, so I just like to talk to you about him. I feel really bad for this guy. Like I said, I literally just put your pencils down. Like, you don't need to write any of this. So L.L. Thurstone was a person who saw Spearman's work and was just like, I don't really agree with this. I'm going to prove him wrong. And so he created these different tests. He created 56 tests and created 7 different mental clusters. Once again, you don't have to write any of this down. And he wanted to, his lone goal was not to prove Spearman wrong, but it was kind of to prove Spearman wrong. And in the end, after all of his testing, all of this work, he had all these people take these 56 different tests, and he wanted to show that intelligence could not be broken down into one piece. And in the end, all of his work really just solidified Spearman's stuff. So it's got to feel pretty bad. Your life's work is only proves to explain your rival's work. So once again, you don't need to know this guy, but this just kind of showing you the power of the G factor, and showing just a poor guy's life. All right, so next we have Lewis Turman. Okay, so a couple things to know with Lewis Turman. So he is going to bring the IQ test to the US. He does this in 1916. And he is going to be the person that gives us like the real IQ score, which is mental age divided by chronological age times 100. So he's going to give us the real IQ test, and he's going to be the first person to give a mass standardized test in the United States. Turman was a big eugenics guy, and he's going to bring about a lot of not great stuff in the U.S. The Stanford Binet intelligence test comes from his work. He brought it to the U.S. and Stanford. He worked on it at Stanford University, and so it's called the Stanford Binet scale. So he's gonna make some changes. He's basically gonna standardize it for the United States. It was in French. It had a lot of questions that were about French things, and so he had to change it over and make it Americanized, so American people are in a French. In the French version from Binet, it asked about a croissant, what is a croissant, or something of that nature, and Turman had to change it because back in the day people didn't know what the heck a croissant was. So once again, Turman's a eugenics guy, and one of the things that you're going to need to remember from him is Turman's termites. Basically, he got a bunch of kids, termite as in the bug. Basically, he got a bunch of kids, and he wanted to know if these high IQ kids would succeed as adults. Basically he wanted to know if these students with high IQs would do well. And he said that they should do well in basically all areas. And in the end, he was basically right. Overall, they were very successful in high school and college. They got good, well-paying jobs, and this was him just kind of solidifying, oh, this is the singular intelligence, Charles Spearman type belief system. Okay, so gonna really wrap through this quickly. David Wexler, he is going to devise some of the newest tests that we take today, intelligence tests specifically. So a lot of intelligence tests are you have to read, you have to answer all these different questions, and Wexler really shook it up by making it truly standardized. So really wanted to make it so that people, literally anyone, could take it. So so you can see this test here, this is a test question. I know I'm kind of blocking this bottom section over here, but all this is asking, and all this is really asking is like, okay, so you have this, this picture here. What does this mean? Like, you don't need to know how to read in order to answer this question. And so this is what Wechsler used as a way to measure intelligence. So this is known as the WAIS, W-A-I-S, and they've got several versions of it: Weiss Kids, Weiss, Weiss for Children, Weiss Adult. They've gone through several versions, and once again, that this is just the different way that we have tests. This is kind of the most or the newest type of intelligence test that we have. So just remember, you're going to need to know Weiss and David Wechsler, and the fact that it doesn't use like it's standardized for anyone. Like, anyone can take this test. Okay, so then we have Robert Sternberg. So we're going to move out of like a lot of people who believed in like what we would call singular intelligence. Wechsler was more of a multiple intelligence guy, but Sternberg believed that intelligence could be broken down into three parts. You have the conventional, you have the creative, and you have the practical. So analytic, conventional, this is your book smarts. Like, I know how to, I know how to read, I know how to study. Practical intelligence is talking about your street smarts, just being able to, know what to do in a specific situation. And creative intelligence is your ability just to think outside the box. So you just need to remember Sternberg. You need to remember that he was a multiple intelligence theorist, and that these were the two, a test question is going to be like, all right, this theorist believed that intelligence could be broken down into these three parts. What are those three parts? So just make sure that you know those. All right, lastly, we're going to get to Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner theory on intelligence is one of the most recent one. And Howard Gardner was all about multiple intelligence, and he believed that so much of what we do is a different type of intelligence. And you can see all of these different areas of intelligence between interpersonal, how we relate to other people, how good you are at understanding music, how good you are at planting trees and like loving nature, how good are you at talking to people. And so he saw all of this. This bottom one is bodily kinesthetic. How good are you at sports? We've all seen people who are just super talented at this. You're super athletes, people who grow, wonderful gardens. You're crazy, amazing musicians, like people who just know how to communicate with others. Like, all this stuff is what Howard Gardner believes is intelligence. And so one of the ways that he really solidified what this was, and that this was a real thing, was his study of savant syndrome. So savant syndrome is a kind of a combination of a intellectual disability and an incredible intelligence in one specific area. So you have people who are really bad at all of this stuff, all this over here, but they are just incredible speakers, or they're incredibly musically talented. All of this is an aspect of savant syndrome. And so Howard Gardner disagrees with Spearman in the fact that intelligences can just be broken down into one parts, and he believed that intelligence was, in so much of what we do, and was split up into multiple parts. So there you go. That is my time for intelligence theories. Thanks for listening in. Have a great day.